morning. It is Tuesday, August 25th, and welcome to The Advantage, where we take you through the latest in political ads and spending. My name is Rachel Haskins.
And I'm Ben Tabor. What's going on, everybody? So before we get into it, I just want to introduce you to who we are and what we do. So Advertising Analytics is the premier media intelligence firm in the political space. We track all spending and all creatives across the entire political sphere, from federal all the way down to your state and your local races. So we have real-time intelligence across all spending and ads in the political landscape. So Rachel, when we get started here, let's start off with kind of the presidential election, kind of set the stage for what that looks like. So right now, we are really heading into the fall. We're heading into the general election sphere. So we're coming to the end of August, the Democratic convention's over, the RNC is going on. So what does the overall spending landscape look like? Who kind of has the advantage right now? So when I pulled these numbers last night, it was actually really interesting for me because it's actually really even right now. So from March until now, so March until the end of August, Republican presidential candidates and groups have spent $240 million. Dems have spent $238. Almost exactly even to the dollar. Yeah. So that's really interesting. And then if we look at what's been booked for the fall, it's almost exactly as even. So Democrats have booked $179 million and $174 million on the Republican side. What does that say to you in terms of just the overall landscape and how even it is right now?
That's far more even than I think anybody would have guessed at this point, especially because the big story coming into really the last month was whether or not Biden was going to be able to do the type of fundraising that he needed to catch Trump, because the Trump campaign has just had such a huge war chest for really since he was elected in 2016. All they've done is fundraise, and have built a really sophisticated digital machine. But you look at some of the fundraising numbers that came out just after Biden announced Kamala Harris as his VP, and there's clearly been a major surge in Democratic donations recently that's giving them the kind of money they need to compete. And I think the fall pre-bookings are particularly telling because that gives us an idea of what the battleground's going to look like going into the election, and those ads are going to matter far more than anything that we've seen aired so far.
That's absolutely right. And so that kind of leads into a nice little segue into where the money is going. So there's basically 13 states that have seen more than, $1 million here or there. So there's really 13 kind of key states. Of them, 6 are really leading the way. Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Arizona have all seen over $60 million in spending, and then there's a pretty substantial drop-off down to Ohio and Minnesota that have seen between 20 and 30. So there's very clearly a top 6, and then another, 6 or 7 that are kind of seeing some money but haven't really reached that same kind of level.
How many of those top 6 states are what we would consider true battlegrounds, and how many are surprises?
So I would say right now, ever since Biden became the nominee, these 6 states have really stood out. That's where the Democrats have spent almost all of their money. There's a longer trail of the states that Trump and his campaign are spending in versus the Democrats. The Democrats have really focused very heavily on these. Trump has spent a lot more in Ohio and Minnesota, Nevada, and New Hampshire. And that kind of makes sense. I mean, they have more states to defend by virtue of having won in 2016.
Sure.
One of the things that was kind of interesting to note was when looking at this was looking at our friends over at Cook Political Report, their ratings of what the battleground states look like. They have all of those except North Carolina as lean Democrats. So even though Trump won those states in 2016, those are states that seem to be polling towards Biden right now.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. So we'll see if where the money is being spent ends up impacting the ratings as we move forward into November.
Absolutely.
So along those lines, while we're talking about where money is being spent, I thought we should take a look at the messages that voters in these states are being subjected, if you will, to right now. So I want to start by putting up an ad from Donald Trump. Everyone's probably seen it. It was airing very heavily about a month ago at the height of protests, but it basically accuses Joe Biden of wanting to defund the police. It's a pretty stark ad, so we're going to take a look at that.
You have reached the 911 police emergency line. Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call. If you're calling to report a rape, please press 1. To report a murder, press 2. To report a home invasion, press 3. For all other crimes, leave your name and number, and someone will get back to you. Our estimated wait time is currently 5 days. Goodbye.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
What do you make of that?
Well, it was part of what I've been calling Crime Month The president has run a lot of ads on Biden, a lot of attack ads, and they've kind of circled through the messages. There was he's old and demented. There's been some economic messaging, some jobs messaging, but this one, and there's a really concentrated burst over the month of July focusing on crime. You know, he was really playing off some of the issues that were going on in America at the time and are still ongoing. I think it's a pretty strong message. I mean, it's very clearly targeted at the suburbs. It's really targeted at the areas outside of, you know, Philadelphia and Charlotte and places like that that are really key to the election and maybe swung from 2016 to 2018 towards the Democrats based on the midterms.
Sure. One of the things I think it is important to note here is that there is no evidence, first of all, that Joe Biden does actually want to defund the police. That being said, it's clearly a message that the president feels like he can really hammer Biden over. And it's just one of several negative attack ads that we've seen the president air. In total, Donald Trump has aired 28 ads since March, and 22 of those ads have been targeting Joe Biden.
How does that look on the Biden side? I don't feel like their messaging has been quite as negative.
It hasn't been. The flip side, Biden has actually aired the same number of unique creatives, 28 ads in total. 12 of those have targeted the president. And Biden tends to take a more nuanced approach when doing this. He will spend most of the ad talking about what he's going to do for America, what his America will look like under a Biden presidency, and then he might drop in a quick note of contrast, or he'll say, this president hasn't done X. And that's really the track that he takes, unless you take a look at this ad that's airing exclusively in Florida, targeting seniors over what the Trump presidency has been like for them.
Donald Trump stepped off the golf course and signed an executive action directing funding cuts for Social Security. He also proposed slashing hundreds of billions of dollars from the Social Security Trust Fund every year, putting your hard-earned benefits in jeopardy. Nearly 4 million Florida seniors rely on Social Security. And once again, Donald Trump's failed leadership is hitting seniors the hardest.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
This is a pretty noted contrast from what he's been running before. It's a pretty strong message. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some similar messaging from him in other key states. They released on YouTube an ad mentioning Goodyear that could be released in Ohio and some other kind of Midwestern states, so we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Absolutely. And it is also important to keep in mind that Joe Biden has a lot of help from outside groups. There are like triple the number of Democratic advertisers who are airing ads than there are Republican advertisers. So he doesn't have to do all of the dirty work in getting his hands into the negative attack ads. He can just let other people like the Lincoln Project do that for him.
That's a great point.
So we will be keeping an eye on all of this moving forward. If anybody has any questions about our spending or ad data, please reach out to Ben at the address listed below, and we'll see you next time.
Everybody have a great week.